Welcome to the MyLifeInConcert.com podcast. I'm your host, various artists, and please join me as I travel back and revisit every live show I've seen from 1975 to the present. And then I walked forward, and that was it. I was inside. It was just me and my burlap haversack strapped over my right shoulder and hanging down the back part of my body. I lifted my left hand, and I placed it upon the door in front of me. I gave it a push, and it started moving. I was now being propelled forward until everything stopped and locked up. And now I'm stuck here, and I can't get out. I keep pushing and pushing and pushing on the door, but it's no use. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. What am I going to do? So I'm wondering why. Why has this happened? Why is this happening? And then I remember the haversack. I reckon that maybe the haversack is caught up in something, and that's why I'm stuck. So I turn around, and it's not the haversack that was the problem. I mean, I couldn't believe it. What the hell? Hey, everybody. Welcome to the MyLifeInConcert.com podcast. I'm your host, Various Artists, and I invite you to jump into the time machine and join me for an epoch-ending festival in episode 27, concert number 19, as I look back and remember Police Picnic 1983, the third and final edition of the annual event featuring hosts The Police, along with Peter Tosh, James Brown, King Sunny Adé, Blue Peter, and the Fixx at CNE Stadium, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Friday, August 5th, 1983. And the ticket price was $20. That's $53 Canadian in 2022. And this episode is entitled Walking on the Moon. Greetings, dear listeners, both new and returning, and thanks for tuning in. This festival and episode is another, along with the Beat REM concert from April of 1983 that I podcasted about in episode 24. This is another that marks the ending of an era. When I look back, that's clear to me now. To start, it was the fourth consecutive summer that I attended a big outdoor festival. Of course, it was Heatwave in 1980. I covered that in episode 10 with the Talking Heads, of course, debuting both their new 9-piece lineup as well as, for the first time ever, material from their then forthcoming album, Remain in Light. Just an amazing, amazing show. Plus Elvis Costello, The Pretenders, the B-52s, Rockpile, Teenage Head, and more. Probably the single best day of music I've ever seen. Then there was the first Police Picnic proper in 1981, out in a field near Oakville, Ontario, with, of course, the Police, plus the Specials, Iggy Pop, Killing Joke, the Go-Go's, and many more. And, of course, I covered that in podcast episode 15. Now, the second Police Picnic in 82, this time it moved to the CNE in the heart of downtown Toronto, and it was a day that was personally a disaster for me, but featured another brilliant Talking Head set, along with The Police Were Great and others, and I covered that off in episode 17. If you're going to go back and listen to an episode, listen to that one, because it's pretty entertaining, even though the day was miserable. And finally, this 1983 edition, which I'm looking at today. Now, I had every reason to believe at that point in time that there would be a Police Picnic 84, or some sort of new wave-ish, large-scale music festival happening in Toronto, as this tradition had been set. But that's the thing about traditions. They don't always last. And that's something I was sadly starting to learn at this point in time. In fact, while I went on to attend a lot of big open-air, large-scale gigs in the upcoming decade, it wouldn't be until Lollapalooza 92 that I would attend another festival. So I had these 4 years where I went to one, and then there was a long dry patch. But, at the same time, too, again, I would go to see the Stones and stuff like that, and there'd be other bands on the bill. But no festivals. And I've covered off Lollapalooza 92 in episode 4. I did that series at the beginning of one festival, one concert from each decade that I've been a concert goer, and I finally got to finish that series earlier in the year with my first concert of this decade, Caribou at the Music Hall last year. One of the things that's interesting, though, about the fact that there was Police Picnic 83 and then Lollapalooza 82, they were both on the same day. They were both held on August 5th. So kind of freaky. And the other reason why this was the end of an era, and I really talk about this in the Beat and REM episode, is that the initial sort of levers being pulled in the punk world, with like in the mid-70s in New York with Patti Smith and the Ramones and television and Blondie and then Talking Heads and all that. And then, of course, a couple of years later, exploding in the UK with the Sex Pistols and Clash and Jam and Buzzcocks and all that. And of course, this, that all exploded and then kept exploding into all these different forms of music and offshoots like new wave and post-punk and electropop. And it was a whole series of interconnected developments that played over this period of time. And it's kind of in the mid-'80s where what started in the mid-'70s in the UK, in London and the UK and New York, really kind of was played out by mid-next decade. And it was really a whole new sensibility taking over. And again, this festival is kind of really at the end of a certain era with a certain flavor, which would start to morph within about a year or two. So again, very much the end of an epoch when I look back now, but at the time, you just don't know these things. I actually, back in the Ramones episode, I did their show from 1980. I also talk a lot there about how it's interesting when you look back on shows or anything in your life or anything that's happened, is you have this whole context to put things into that you didn't have at the time. And again, so now I can view this show a little differently than I did at the day, although as you'll find out, unlike with Police Picnic 82, this was a wonderful one, and you'll be finding out why. Now, as for what I was talking about at the top of the episode, all will be explained in the upcoming interview when I get to the bit where I talk about arriving at the Eaton Centre in Toronto. So stay tuned for that, and you'll be able to figure out what the hell was going on there. This episode is also a new and exciting first for the podcast, in that it's largely composed of a three-way interview between myself, returning special guest Phil Robinson, who's joined me on many episodes, and again, for the first time ever, we've got a three-way interview. Joining us today is Phil's old pal from back in the day, Noelle, who attended the festival along with him and two of their friends. They not only help each other piece together their day and their trip down, it's the first live chat they've had with each other since the mid-'80s when Phil moved back to the UK. So another momentous occasion for the podcast. However, before the interview, I'd like to remind listeners to check out the mylifeinconcert.com website and blog chronicling this and many other shows that I've seen between 1975 and now, with the original blog entries featuring extra information, including photos, links, the original ticket, related Spotify playlists, various ephemera, and more. And as for those Spotify playlists, you can view them, my name, you can just view them under my username, Various Artists, on Spotify, but that may not be the easiest way to search. It's just as easy to search for mylifeinconcert.com, since I put that on the end of all the titles, or all of my playlists start with MLIC prompt. So you can search on that and you'll find them all. Now, I have two up on Spotify and the website for this episode that I created for this episode. First is MLIC prompt. Walking on the Moon, Police Picnic 83, featuring tracks from the artists who performed at this final festival. And secondly, MLIC prompt, Bring on the Night, Police Picnics 81, 82, 83, which is a master playlist featuring tracks from all of the artists who played at each of the 3 festivals, including the people we're going to talk about today, plus Talking Heads, Iggy Pop, The Specials, The Beat, Killing Joke, Go-Go's, etc., etc., etc. Also, please like, follow, and subscribe on our Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as our YouTube channel, which features not only the podcast, but live footage from shows that Cublet and I have shot through the years, along with some vintage video clips. And remember to hit that notification bell for new episodes. Okay, back to the show. Now, in this upcoming interview, the 3 of us sketch out the context for the festival. We talk about all the artists, so I'm not going to do as much of a preamble. I'm just going to jump into the interview shortly, the interview that I did with Phil and Noelle. Now, initially, Phil and Noelle have some problems remembering details, but once we reach the point where we're at the show, they really help each other clarify a lot of things, plus there's other information. So as they go back into the day, more and more details emerge. And I do want to note that there's some tiny technical issues from this interview, especially what happened was Phil's Zoom connection dropped out briefly on occasion, or is a bit degraded at certain moments, along with some other very minor technical imperfections during the chat. I had to do some volume adjusting, but they are minor, and most of the interview sounds fine. So anyway, let's go to it. Here's the interview. Okay, so I'm here today with special guest Phil Robinson, who has been part of the podcast many times, but we also have a new guest today for the first time, Noelle. Say hi, Noelle.
Hello, everyone.
Now, on the day of the police picnic, Phil went with Noelle and Wendy and someone we'll call Sammy the Goose. Any SCTV fans from back in the day will know that reference. And I went with Le Chateau, who, of course, has been part of this series. We went to quite a number of concerts together. And this year we went to this one together. And what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about my day, because even though Phil and I knew each other at the time, we kind of had separate plans worked out. And as we were just saying, we were going to try to look out for each other in the middle of 60,000 people. And of course, that didn't work out. So I'm going to be talking about my day, but also what's really exciting is Phil and Noelle are going to be live in the podcast, recounting their day, what they happened, sharing their memories, seeing if they can sort of eke out other memories from each other by talking about it. So this is the day. So how about I start with you two? Is first off, how did you first hear about the event? How did you sort of decide you were going? How did you know you were going? All that kind of lead up. What do either of you remember about that?
I don't know. I can't remember when I actually saw it being advertised, but I do remember thinking I've got to go to it because I've been to the other two. The other two were great, so I really wanted to go. But I don't remember making any plans of the lead up to going. Maybe Noelle, can you remember anything?
I don't think I have specific memories of it, but Wendy was a close friend of mine at the time and still is. And she usually was the one who cooked things up. So I'm assuming she was trying to get us all to go. That would just be my assumption. And we had actual tickets, which you don't really get anymore. And I'm thinking we probably bought those at Sam the Record Man.
Probably.
Or Records on Wheels, probably. Records on Wheels.
Sam's was it may have been Records on Wheels. Sam's for years was the main ticket outlet downtown, but I think you're right. Records on Wheels did it too.
Yeah, so one of those two places, I imagine, is where we would have got them.
Wasn't Wendy and Sam both living in Toronto at the time?
I'm not sure.
Because they did both live there.
Because I know when we did Police Picnic 82, Wendy had just moved there to go to school. Because you said that you were there a few days earlier to meet up with her. Because she had just moved to the city in early 82. So it makes sense that she'd be there a year later.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
where things are getting foggy, but so
Yeah.
I was, I guess, 18 at that time. And I know that I had been getting a little bit more able to get out and about on my own late at night because my parents were pretty strict and I could never get into bars. I looked way too young.
I had that same issue. It was
I-
the only way I got into bars when I was younger was going in with my older siblings' friends because I always looked a couple of years younger than my age. Now I'm happy about that, but back then that was like, oh, I hate it.
I could never. I didn't even try. So this would have been, the kind of things we went to concerts and stuff because we didn't really try to get into bars. But so, yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm still confused about how we got there.
I presume we got there. I presume we actually, like travel-wise, we probably got the bus, I think, because that would have been the cheapest option.
So do you think you and I went together?
I think so.
Why can't I remember?
I'm guessing. I can remember us being in Toronto, and I don't know if it was for that particular weekend or was it for another weekend we went.
I know we went to see other things because I remember going to some hotel where, somebody had to check in and then sneak the rest of us in. Do you remember that? And we put the, I don't know, I remember we took the box springs off and put mattresses on the floor so we could all just sleep in the room. And I don't know what that was for. And I was thinking, was it for this maybe? Because I doubt we would have taken the bus back home after. I don't know.
No. Oh, I can't remember what we did afterwards. That's a bit weird. But
we're missing parts of
missing bits.
The parts of the day has gone missing.
I don't even think we were drinking and we weren't doing drugs that I know of.
No.
I know that.
Boy, wait till you hear my side of the story.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to know how you did it because I remember it being super. There was a lot of security getting in, and they were searching everything. And we had a cooler, and I think we had talked about injecting the watermelon with vodka. Do you remember that kind of thing?
Yeah, I can remember us taking an actual picnic and having food, but I don't remember having any alcohol.
No, because they would have taken it. But
Yeah.
did we actually go through with injecting the watermelon?
I don't know if we did. I think, did we put together a fruit salad kind of thing and put vodka in instead of water or something?
We may have. I know we talked all about how we could do it, and I don't know if we did.
I know the year before for 82, which I don't know if you heard that podcast or it was the worst experience of my life. We bought bad speed pills and we had this whole elaborate thing where we had jugs of orange juice that we carefully opened with like a razor and put in this straw and put in all this vodka and went to all this trouble. And we sealed it with contact cement in the fridge with clamps for 4 days. And we got it in because it was sealed, but we were all so sick we couldn't touch any of the alcohol. We were just too sick. It was just ridiculous. Okay, so I'll pick up from my end. I don't really recall the announcement. I actually don't recall any of that. All I know is I knew I was going immediately because I'd been to the other two. Plus I'd been to Heatwave in 1980. So this was 4 summers in a row. I was going to a big outdoor festival. And I thought, there's no way I'm going. Now, in the first one in 81, I went with Lady B and someone she was going out with at the time. The second time, it was the disaster. Oh, God, the worst day ever. It was Lady B, Le Chateau, and I. Now, for this third one, Lady B did not go. I'm pretty sure she had to work. She was working in a clothing store. So it was Le Chateau and I. Can't remember getting the tickets, any of that. all I remember, but I do remember the trip down. We took the bus, and I think it was about the 10 o'clock bus, because we thought, okay, we'll get to Toronto a little bit early, you know, go Queen West, you know, kind of do different things, Eaton Center, whatever, and then go to the gig a little bit later in the afternoon. So we got on this, and I remember we had like a fifth of vodka each, and we were just like 10 in the morning drinking it right back. Youth. And so anyway, back in the day, and I think I did have something along to sort of like smoke at the event, which obviously we managed to smuggle in. But the big thing was this was back in the day, we all used to do bennies, the like cheap amphetamine. And I was probably for about another year after this, but at the time they were everywhere. Like they were super easy to get. I mean, housewives used to take these in the 60s, but they were always around. And as with Police Picnic 82, for whatever reason, I don't remember, they were not around. And at that point, we need our bennies to like party 24/7. And we didn't have any. And so I think that's why we took extra alcohol. And also we knew we weren't going to, we thought, no way, we're not taking a cooler or anything. We're just going to the event this year. And so we got on the bus, and clearly the last half of the bus, back of the bus, was everyone was going to the festival. And this guy approached us and he said, I've got pills, I've got bennies. And it's like, would you like to buy some? And I'm like, no way, not a chance. I'm not buying anything that I don't know what it is. And so a bit later on, so he's selling them to everyone. And a bit later on, I go to the bathroom, and I come back from the bathroom, and Le Chateau is sitting there with money in his hand. He said, I'm going to try it. I talked to the guy again. He said he's going to take his pill and he'll take it in front of me. He'll just grab a random one out of the bag to prove that they're safe. And I was like, yeah, being young and foolish, sure. Although this foolish turned out to be good. And so anyway, he came and he just took one, put it in mouth. So I thought, okay, he's taken one, but he kept repeating over and over, just take one. Like, don't take more than one. And the one thing I noticed when we bought them off, when we bought a few, they were huge. Like they were like twice the size. And I'm like, this doesn't look what I usually take, but they were black. And so we took one, washed it down with a straight vodka. And anyway, we're about like half an hour away. And then and of course they take a while to kick in, and we're getting close. We're in Toronto. We're getting close to the Greyhound station. And the guy stands up for like the back part of the bus and goes, I've got an announcement. I got to tell you again, be careful. Only take one. Now, I got these a few nights ago. They're good. In fact, they're really good. As a matter of fact, I think there might be something in them more than amphetamine. No kidding. And so we pull up to the station, and that's when they kicked in. And it was just like, holy. And anyway, now I understand what happened. I wasn't aware at the time, because years ago I had to have all 4 of my wisdoms pulled. One was impacted, and there was a dead tooth underneath. So they were going to have to literally drill into my jaw. And when I went in for that, I was talking to the doctor. He said, no, what about painkillers? And I said, look, they're drilling into my jaw. I don't want any of this Tylenol 3 crap. I want the real thing. And this was far enough back. He said, well, how about Oxycontin? I said, great idea. Now, I don't want to in any way minimize the damage that Oxycontin has done, and now it's illegal. But I took it, and okay, I not that I've ever done heroin or wanted to, but I know why they call it hillbilly heroin. It's like, holy crap. And the first thing I thought of was Police Picnic 83. And maybe I knew someone who maybe had some Percocets they gave me. Anyway, what I realize now, I didn't take a stimulant. These were narcotics. And we were just, I remember us walking down Yonge Street, the two of us not saying a word, just, it felt like you were walking down the street in a warm bath. And I was just, everything was there, but it was hyper real and surreal. And it almost felt like I was watching everything on a TV. And we were both just, holy, whoa. And we went into the Eaton Center. We thought, we want to go in, and we're going through the revolving doors. And I'm pushing the door, and it gets stuck. And I'm like pushing it with my one hand, and it won't open. I thought, what's jamming it? And I had like a burlap haversack with me that day with some stuff. That's all we had. I thought, oh, it's probably caught in the door. And I turned around, and actually there was something caught in the door. It was my right arm.
Oh my God.
Yeah, didn't feel a thing.
Oh.
Yeah. So I just kind of it back and just, we went. And we're walking down Queens West and to one of the boutiques, and we had to go down these stairs. And we get down there, and we're just flying. And also, too, you had a whole fifth of vodka on top of that in our system. And it's like 1 p.m. And we walk in, and it was kind of like this alternative clothing store. And there was this kind of like, Queens West alterna gal and, a kilt and, Louise, Brooks Bob and stuff. And they had these smokers set up in the room. Do you know what a smoker is? I've got my grandmother's from the 60s. It was kind of what they had in the 60s, where it was sort of a metal fixture, metal tray, and the ashtray would be on top, and you could put magazines underneath, and there was a little handle and a lighter. And, I'm just kind of wandering around on my arms. It was like rubber ribbons in the wind. And I just my arm went out and it hit the smoker and smashed it to smithereens on the floor. And I'm like, oh, and I can just in absolute mortification, like, I'm so sorry. And the woman there, oh no, that's no problem at all. Happens all the time here. And within about 5 minutes, there was a new smoker on the floor. She said there was a back room of them.
Oh.
Because of course that's when things were starting to get a little bad on Queens West with stuff infiltrating that scene. So anyway, so that was our afternoon, and then so that's how our day started. So we had a much more degenerate day than you two had, and this continues on. So that's what we did. So do you remember arriving at the concert and maybe arriving there, getting in? Do you have any memories about that?
I remember just little bits, but for some reason I remember lining up with that cooler we had and waiting because they were doing all the searching. So it kind of makes me wonder if we did have something going on, because was I nervous? I don't know. I'm nervous about the cooler.
I bet we did have something. I think we probably had. Yeah, I think we probably did have something, but I can't remember what. It probably would have been vodka of some.
Yeah. I don't remember being drunk or anything, so it couldn't have been too much, but.
No.
And knowing Wendy, there would be lots to eat, because she's not going anywhere without a picnic.
Oh, that's handy.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
It's funny because in the year before when Wendy and I went, I can't remember eating. We didn't take a picnic or any food, but we did drink beforehand. Next to the eating center, there was that little park bit. I spoke about that last time, but so I think we probably would have tried to at least taken something in.
I just remembered something. There's another memory from the afternoon, a particularly pertinent one for this episode. I forgot. I'm going through my notes. The thing at the store, there was the roundabout, the store. The other big thing that happened that was very cool, we were walking around the perimeter of City TV in the afternoon, and we were walking around the back or the side, and it was just a wall, not the front glassed area. And this side door opens, and out walks Andy Summers and Jeannie Becker, because she was on the New Music at the time. Now, most listeners, when they hear Jeannie Becker, of course, they think fashion television, her amazing show that she did for years. But what most people don't know about her, she used to be on this music show in the early 80s, this great show out of Toronto called The New Music. And she was also, because this is pre-Much Music, because Much Music started in 84. So I know that she had interviewed Andy Summers in a bathtub the year before, and they became very chummy, and he's done a few interviews with her. So they were coming out the side door, and we're still just like zooed, and we're like, oh my God. And so Phil Le Chateau had a cigarette pack and went up to Andy Summers and said, "Can you sign this?" So Andy Summers signed his cigarette pack. And the one thing, and not to be mean to Andy Summers, but like he was a bit older than the other two, and he'd still be a pup, what I'd consider now. But the one thing we noticed was he was a lot older looking, a lot of airbrushing in the photos. And Jeannie Becker just kind of was looking bored and was like, "Let's get out of here." But anyway, he did sign it. So that was pretty cool. And then in terms of wandering down, we just wandered down and went inside. And again, we're just like floating on a cloud. We're just serenity. We are Zen. And, I remember getting in and, Blue Peter were on the stage. They were already performing. Now, Phil, do you remember what we used to call Blue Peter back in the day?
No.
Oh, you don't? I
No.
still refer to them. We always called them Blue Penis.
Oh, of course.
And I mean, it's just there for the. You don't remember that? We used to say, "Oh, blue." You don't remember? Oh no! Even now today, I say Blue Penis.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah. So were you guys? Do you guys have any memories of their set?
A little bit. We were there for. We got in before it all started, so we were there for that.
What? No. Whereabouts? Do you remember where you were?
We were sort of midway back, I think. I don't think we weren't rammed in. We weren't sort of crunched in. So we were sort of midway back, I think, in the general admission part from the front, but sort of almost middle stage as well. So we had a pretty good view.
Yeah, I felt like we were right in front of the stage, but back a bit. We had a blanket and we were able to sit and.
Yeah, I can remember Wendy having twigs in her braids.
Twigs?
Twigs, yeah. She put twigs in her braids because there was loads of people coming up to her singing Elena Lovitch, Lucky Number.
Actually, I have something. When I did the original blog entry, when I was starting this back on Open Salon, I talked to you about it, and this is what you had to say then. We took a picnic, and I snuck in a bottle of vodka down the front of my pants. Sammy the Goose and I spent the day wandering around. We got to the front of the stage and just walked through the crowd.
Yes.
We got talking to a couple of girls who invited us to a party. We didn't go. And arguing with some woman for some reason. Do you remember the argument at all?
No, I don't. I remember all of that because I was going to talk about Sam and I going off and then sort of went to the left of the hand stage and kind of shimmied across right in front of the stage and then went and sat in the bleachers, kind of the seating area where the guy from the bass player from Blue Peter was sort of sat a couple of rows in front. But I don't remember having an argument with anybody. It was probably over something and nothing.
Well, yeah, again, that's one of the memories that has exited your hard drive, mental hard drive.
Yes,
that happens.
definitely.
So do you have any memories of Blue Peter set or them coming on? I have a few, but I'll let you go first.
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
At all. No.
I remember. I think I remember enjoying it. I think they're just like the Spoons, who were the year before. Was that were the Spoons on them?
Go ahead.
It kind of felt like they were like the Canadian, the CanCon of the concert. Like the organizers who'd done it had to put a Canadian band in. So
now I see. I thought you were talking music-wise. Now I see what you mean. Yes, and of course they were Toronto promoters. They were trying to promote the local scene as well. This because the Garys did this one. I'm pretty sure.
The two Garys, the Garys,
So they were always very, very good at promoting local and Canadian talent.
Yeah, I don't remember any specifics of the set, so maybe Don't Walk Past.
Yeah, because again, I'm going through my notes. That was the big hit at the time. Because I really liked Blue Peter. I always really liked them. And they're kind of, and for listeners who don't know, especially outside of, they're not really known outside of Canada. And they came out of that Toronto punk scene. I've got their first EP on Ready Records. They developed their own following here, and they turned into kind of more of a Roxy Music-ish kind of band as they went along, and they did well. They had that hit Chinese Graffiti. Wait a minute, who was the woman who sang with him? Because on Chinese Graffiti, it was a duet. It was him, Cheryl. Was it Cheryl? Someone? Because I'm having a memory
Cheryl Ray,
flash.
not Cheryl Ray.
No. This was, and she was on Ready Records and part of that. Because this is actually now coming in. I just realized I have a distinct memory of Paul Humphreys. He's the lead singer from Blue Peter, who sadly passed away last year. And I saw Blue Peter another number of times. They're coming up in this series. But I have this distinct memory, and it's from the summer of 1984. Phil, do you remember? I can't remember who it was, but there was somebody here in town who had had some properties, and that summer threw several speakeasies. They'd begin late at night, and they went till 4 a.m. It was on Talbot. And he had about 3 or 4 of them, and everyone had a theme. So that if the cop shows up, it's like we had rented, like one was a wedding. So I remember going out that night, and you knew who was going to the speakeasy, because normally rather than in like ripped jeans or a t-shirt, they were dressed nice. So you knew where they were going. And at one of them, I think it's because Blue Peter were playing in the park that day, and he was there, and the party went on to like 4 a.m. And I now realize you were there because of this just came back to me. And it was like 4 a.m. Most people had cleared out, and I went downstairs to get another beer because they had the beer hidden away and the money all hidden if the cop showed up. And I went down, and it was the guy who threw them plus Mark DeRue and Phil Humphreys. And they were they were talking about David Bowie. And of course, as you know, I'm about the biggest Bowie nut there is. And they got talking about David Live, that live album from 74, which I've never liked. And I said, Stage is much better, because those were the available ones at the time. And they were like, no. So we got into this just impassioned debate about David Live versus Stage. And I was like, Mr. Stage. But I remember we were talking to him, and now I know that you're there because this is going to be, I can't remember her name, but the woman who sings in it, who actually had some good pop hits, we were saying we liked her, but we thought she looked too much like a housewife in her videos. I remember this. And I remember Paul. Yes, we did. I remember Paul Humphreys laughing, saying, I'm going to tell her that. Sorry, I'm blanking. I love her voice, and she had some really good singles, but we thought, remember, we used to watch her videos and go, she looks too much like a housewife. She needs to be sort of wilder looking or whatever. And he was kind of amused by that. No memories of all of this. So like Mark was there, and like I literally think that was it in that dingy basement at like 4 a.m. Anyway.
Those sound like fun.
What's that?
Those sound like fun, the speakeasies.
Oh, they were good. He just did it that one summer, and there was about 3 or 4 of them, and each one there was a theme. And they had a great DJ, and they started at about like 1 and went to like, I remember one walking out, it was dawn. I was walking out of there at dawn. Yeah. So, fun times. All right. So after Blue Penis, we then, up next, King Sunny Adé. Oh yeah. Okay. So for me, this was my favorite set of the day. Do you have any memories or any thoughts?
I do. I mean, obviously can't name any of the songs or whatever, but I do remember being blown away and not really knowing them that, before that. And I think that when there was a group on that we were interested in, we moved, because I feel like I was closer to the stage for this. So
I'm pretty sure, Phil, you even said it in there, you moved around a bit. We tended to sort of stay where we were, but it sounds like you did some more moving around.
Well, I think we left our stuff, but then, people, I'm going to go closer, like we came back to the central area, but if, we were interested and wanted to get closer. So I feel like I moved up closer for that and really enjoyed it and was really pumped by the end of it. Like, wow, I can't believe what I just saw, and thought it was, and like I said, I was fairly naive at this point to going out and seeing bands. I think I was just starting to do that in the last couple of years. So everything was amazing to me. So that was, I remember being like a big fan right after that.
Oh yeah. I remember being absolutely blown away. I'm reading back. It said I brought Juju music after the album. For some reason, I think I had it before. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The show, I know I was looking forward to seeing him, but whatever expectations I had, they were like 5 times better than I was expecting. It's always stayed with me, and I just thought they were absolutely incredible. I could have watched them for hours.
Yeah, I remember enjoying them. I don't think I'd actually heard anything by them beforehand, but I do remember really, really liking them.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And I think, and somewhere in around this time, or maybe after it, I think we consumed, I had a couple of spliffs, which I think we had, but I think somewhere in around this time, we then took the second, another pill, because it had been a few hours. Ooh. So it was like blast off all over again. So yeah, it was absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And up next was the Fixx. The Fixx, that band, they had to hit one thing to another.
Yeah.
So for me, there was the band I was least interested in seeing.
Yes. Yeah. Me too. Yeah. Because they never really sort of interested me at all. So I don't think I really paid much attention to them.
Yeah.
I
have no memory. I just know that we were at the festival. I have this like fleeting dust of memory of them on the stage. That's it. There's no memories of this.
Yeah, I don't remember them either. And I know that there was probably bands that we just sat and chatted or ate or whatever. So that might have been one of them.
It was, yeah.
And
I can't.
Go ahead. No,
because I can't remember who it was when Sam and I went off and wandered and went to the front of the stage and then sat down in the seats. I can't remember who that was for. So I don't know whether that was during that time. Was A Flock of Seagulls on?
No, that was the year before.
All right, okay.
I'm
getting that.
Your festivals mixed up. Yes.
Yeah. So I can't remember. I can't really remember much of them because it didn't really interest me.
No, I have no memories of that point. I have no memories at that point of the day. Okay, up next. So up next was James Brown. Now, the number. Now, each of the Police picnics, I did want to see the Police, and we'll be getting to them later. But in each case, the main reason that I bought a ticket wasn't the Police. In the first year, it was the Specials and Iggy Pop. The second year, it was to see the Talking Heads again. And this one, it was to see Simple Minds. Simple Minds were on the original bill, and that's what now that I remember it, I wanted to go, but that was the number one band I wanted to see, because I had, especially the previous years, they'd been one of my favorite bands, and I had loved New Gold Dream and Sons of Fascination, and I was really excited to see them. And we found out some point, I don't know when, but that they weren't going to be on the bill, and James Brown was going to be on the bill. Now, for me, this was a big deal. I'd liked James Brown's music in the past, but it was kind of around this point, especially the early 80s, that's when I really started going back in music a lot more, and particularly a lot of R&B and funk from the 60s and 70s. I got really heavily into. And at this point, it was like the moment I was really rediscovering and discovering James Brown's catalog. So I was extremely excited about this set, and I was one of the all-time disappointments for me, is how I remember it.
I do remember we had a little online discussion about this.
Right.
And I am of the opposite mind.
Excellent.
But for different reasons, right? Because again, I was naive to live music. I knew who James Brown was. But I had never seen him live, and I certainly didn't own any of his records. But I was completely enthralled by his show and him and the theatrics. And I had never seen this whole, like, you know, he's finished, they come with his cape, and then he shrugs it off and starts playing again. And then they come back with the cape because he's going to collapse, and they come. I just thought that that was the best thing I had ever seen. And, you know, it was all new to me. And I know that you said it wasn't his best show. And, you know, if this was a crappy show for him, it's probably still amazing because he's James Brown. But yeah, that was, I talked about that.
But that's
forever.
just my opinion. I'm not, like, everyone has an opinion. I could very well be wrong.
Oh yeah, but you knew, if you had seen him more often, and, you know, you would be able to tell when a show was, you know, not the best. And you probably knew that.
Well, okay, here's my take, but also sort of a retrospective take. My take is that he just, I mean, now I now know that this is when he started getting into PCP and hard drug use, and he'd been Mr. Straight Spell for years. And I just thought he just seemed out of it. Like his energy was really low. He kept losing his voice. He just seemed he wasn't in performing shape. That's what I thought at the time. But it's interesting because I've talked about this in a few other podcasts. It's almost like, okay, we're talking here today, and we are the age we are now, and I have these memories, but, you know, you're a different person at different points of your life. I mean, you are the same person, but you really become different people at different times. So it's almost like I'm having a report told to me from, well, like 20 or 21-year-olds, however old I was. 20 I would have been at the time. So I'm having this reported from this young person, and I may now, let's say I saw this, I may have a different perspective. I maybe was being overly critical, or this is the tricky part, because you're relying on memories. But if you went through this now, you may not feel the same way, more positive or negative. So it's hard to say. And it's this chasm between what we remember. But it may not necessarily speak for our experience now, but we'll never know that. It's impossible to know.
Right. And I was having a great time during his show. So that, you know, just really colors it as well. And I do think I moved up. I feel like I was quite close for that
neat
performance as well. So I must have moved up for that. And
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're team no. Okay. So what was it about the set? Oh,
Like you, Brent, I was really wanted to see Simple Minds.
Oh yeah.
And because I missed seeing them a couple of years before, because they
at
were playing.
Fryfogels.
And was it? No, it wasn't Fry's.
It was Fry's.
Was it?
Yeah, because I saw Simple Minds. They played here in 2018 at Budweiser Gardens, and I went. Cublet and I went.
Right, because
Harry, and he said, "Who was at the show at Fry's?" He goes, "I don't remember it. I looked it up on the internet."
Oh.
But he asked who was at that show.
Fry's. Anyway, yeah, because
maybe it wasn't, but that's okay. This is what Jim Kerr said when I saw him in 2018. I do kind of remember it being Fry's.
I remember.
Where else could it have been?
Was it not at? Oh, I can't remember the name.
It definitely wasn't a concert hall.
No, it was a bar, because the Zealots were opening up, and a couple of weeks before I went to see Bauhaus at the Polish Hall.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And
I walk by that almost every day on my speed walk and run.
And I was there. I was serving the pop and the chips at the back of the room for Bauhaus, and with Jane from the Zealots. And she said to me, "Well, you should come and see us." And I said, "Well, how can I come and see you? I'm only 16. You know, I'm not going to be able." She said, "Well, we're opening up for Simple Minds. I'll put you on the guest list." So I was like, "Yes."
Dear listeners, Does anyone know the mystery of where Simple Minds played in London? I'm going to put that up on Facebook.
Richmond Tavern?
No. Oh,
No.
God, no. No.
Okay.
Too small.
So
that's
anyway,
actually still a hopping. That's a very used place today.
It's better now.
Yeah.
It's way less sketchy.
Yeah. But back in the day, no way. And the Cedar Lounge would have closed and it would have been too small. I'll put it up on Facebook when I put this episode up. I can assure you there'll be a bunch of people in the London punk rock room who will
somebody will know,
The Embassy was another, or the Victoria Tavern.
Right.
Right.
It definitely wouldn't been the Vic. Maybe the Embassy. The Embassy.
No,
it's small. I don't know.
That was that was before Bullwinkle's.
Oh, there's Bullwinkle's too,
Yeah, that wasn't. It was long before that.
Because it was 81. Wait a minute, was it the Spoke? Did they play it?
I don't think it's there anymore. I think it was on a corner. It was part of it was like a cheap hotel or something in it.
Oh, like Mingles,
No, it wasn't Mingles. Oh. It was more sort of
because there was
corner
Mingles,
of Dundas and something.
Mingles and the Fire Hall were all at that corner, and
no, it wasn't that corner. You know when you were on Dundas Street, and then you got to the corner of Richmond and Dundas, but you kept going down Dundas, not towards Fry's, the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another corner, of course. But then there was like a hotel, which I think they've knocked it down now to build that arena
to build
thing.
the Budweiser.
Yeah. That was Mingles. That was the Talbot Inn. It wouldn't have.
Are you sure?
Mingles. That's Mingles. Yeah. And then they had the Fire Hall, the Blues Club.
And
I can walk to it. In my head, I can walk to it, but I can't remember the name. Right. So
I can assure someone will help us out.
Somebody will, yeah.
Yes.
And I hope they do.
Yes. Oh, one other thing I just want to mention going through my notes. That was the other thing about James Brown I think that suffered is right before this time, we had gotten, like, pay TV had started in Canada, and they showed the Tammy Show, TAMI, from 1964, which I'd wanted to see for years, with the Rolling Stones. It's a big concert in 1964, the Rolling Stones, the Supremes, all the big acts of the day, Leslie Gore, the Barbarians, and the Four Tops and Smokey Robinson. Anyway, James Brown is in it. He's the second last act. He comes on before the Stones. It's funny because you can see how nervous Mick Jagger is having to follow that. I love the Stones too, but I think it's because I'd also been watching that performance, which is pretty much accepted as one of his greatest filmed performances. Right. So that was probably the benchmark I was comparing it to. So that also could have unfairly impacted how I felt about it.
See, I was just really, really disappointed for not seeing Simple Minds. So I was not in the mood. I didn't want to see. I thought, no. To me, it just felt like, I mean, I was only 18, I think. So it just didn't seem like he fitted into the day. I would have thought they would have picked somebody a bit more along those sort of early 80s post-punk new wave vibe kind of thing, and not James Brown.
I disagree, because this was such a rhythmic, there's such a focus on
I suppose
music.
But looking back now, as you know, 50 something, I can kind of see it.
I do wish I did like how they would do that for those concerts. They wouldn't do it for, I don't know, like a heavy metal picnic where they would just throw in some other kind of music, right? But for these kinds of things, I think it made us more worldly to have like an old rhythm and blues guy that we now can learn from. If you didn't know who that was, there's another avenue for you to look into music. But anyway, if you're disappointed, I totally get
it. So we each had a different experience for a different reason, but that's why this whole thing is amazing. Is everyone goes to the same event, but everyone has a unique and different and special experience.
And I did manage to get to see him again.
Oh, really? When?
In 2004.
And how was that?
It was at the Glastonbury
Was that
Festival.
Glastonbury? Okay. Was it the Legend slot that he did on Sunday?
No, I don't think so. They didn't really call it the Legend slot that time. But I don't think
that's before they were doing it, right?
I don't think it could have been that time. I remember it had been raining.
That's Glastonbury.
It was raining. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and I was eating pie and peas and gravy. So I was stood there in the rain with a tray full of meat pie, mushy peas and gravy and onion, eating and watching James Brown and enjoying it a lot more.
Yeah.
He did sing all the songs. He did have some, I don't know whether it was his wife or he had some backing vocalists as well who would sing a couple of songs, and he would go off, come back on. I don't know whether that was because of his age, because he was older, but it felt more like a old school kind of soul show that you would expect it to have got, way back when.
Oh, so nice.
I enjoyed it a lot more.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Maybe because I was older and I didn't want to see some,
Exactly. Yeah. The non-simple minds aspect had been taken out of the picture. Yeah. Oh, cool. Okay. I don't know if you ever told me that before. So that's really interesting.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So up next after James Brown was Peter Tosh, which was for me the surprise set of the day. This is if you go see live music a lot, you know that, you always have expectations for a show. And sometimes you can be let down, as I was with James Brown at the time. But it can also go in the reverse, where you think, oh, this will be good. And you see them and they just absolutely blow you away. That's how this was for me with Peter Tosh. He blew my mind with this set. I'd been a fan kind of the later 70s. I had legalized it and Bush Doctor, but hadn't kind of been listening as much for the previous couple of years. And he came on. It was one of those, I was just knocked sideways. I thought he was absolutely incredible. I loved his set. Any thoughts? Loved it, hated it, in the middle, don't remember?
I completely forgot that he was on until you just mentioned it. And then as you were talking, I can remember enjoying it, but that's probably about it. I do, because What about you, Noelle?
Yeah, I don't remember it. I like him, so I have no doubts that I enjoyed it, but the memory didn't stick with me on that.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I think we actually had the other spliff while he was on, of course. But no, he really, really blew me away. It's kind of one of those things where I remembered it's really funny too, the way you experience time, because here we're in 1983, it would have been like just maybe hadn't been listening to him as much in, say, the last 2 years, and now we have like 50, 45, 50 years. But the thing is, when you're that much younger and you only have this much remembered time in your life, 2 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember he was murdered several years later. And I remember my clock radio going off in the morning and that story coming on. The first thing I thought about was remembering seeing him at Police Picnic 83, because I'd enjoyed the show so much. I was so shocked by the news.
Yeah.
And so with Tosh's exiting came the Police. Now, again, this is the third summer of seeing the Police. And the first time, Phil and I kind of agreed that they weren't at their best. It wasn't a very good show. And Sting was having voice problems. The 82 were much better. I really, really enjoyed the show, which was something too, because in 82, we had also brought the cooler and everything, not realizing, because we hadn't done a stadium gig before, that just because you have a ticket doesn't mean you get to go on the floor. We had seats, and for whatever reason I've never been able to understand, we actually just walked in and weren't stopped. But that meant once we were in, we couldn't leave to go to the bathroom because we wouldn't get back in. So it was worth staying for. We had to run to the bathrooms after. Luckily this year we had learned our lessons, gotten floor seats, and didn't bring a million things. So we were really looking forward to them. And also just to contextualize things, the police were in an absolute peak at this point in their career, because Every Breath You Take had been number one. Synchronicity had just been released. And so they'd been big and big and big, but this is when they went kaboom. And I've always had the feeling that one of the most exciting times to see a band is when they've just taken a leap in their career. And it could be from unknown to getting known to like they were already big, but then they just went huge. For me, it seems there's always this energy with a band that's just exploding. Same with when I saw Pearl Jam in 1992 at Lollapalooza. It's just, there's this extra frisson energy that you have with them. And I thought this was the best of the 3 times I saw them. I thought they were great. I've never been like a mega fan. I've always really liked them. But Synchronicity, I think, is one of their best. And I thought this performance was just fantastic. Over to you.
Have you got something to say, Phil?
Yeah, I do remember liking them a lot, but I was a big fan of them anyway. So I remember, yeah, because they were a lot more popular. They were huge at that point.
Yeah,
it's probably that they're most popular.
Oh yeah, they were probably possibly the biggest band in the world at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that made the crowd a bit more, I suppose, more diverse with the people than, say, comparing it to the very first one, where it was probably more people who were into all of the other bands as well as the Police, whereas this one was probably more people who were just really into the Police and not much more the other acts. Right. But I do remember really enjoying them and liking them a lot. There's not a whole lot of the songs I can remember at the top of my head. I remember when they finished and they went off the stage and a camera followed them backstage to the dressing room and they had a cup of tea. I can remember Sting holding up a cup like that. Yes. Having a cup of tea and then coming back out and doing an encore.
Oh.
Yeah, actually, that's the number one thing I remember about the set, because this is one thing I was going to bring up. For me, this is a really important gig in one sense. This was the first gig I ever went to where there were video screens, which were now at larger shows. You're used to them. It's the norm. That's the first one I ever went to where they had the Jumbotron. And we were like, oh my God, when you're at a big gig, this makes all the difference in the world. No more gesticulating specs and no other alternative. And it's kind of cheesy in a way, they went back, they had the cup of tea, but it was really cool because you'd never seen that at a show before, and going backstage and everyone the whole time, Sting's drinking his tea and there's 60 and the place was packed. The stadium was packed. And it's, you're drinking tea, but that was one thing that's significant we hadn't mentioned. This was the first gig I ever went to where there was a video screen. And that thing where they had the tea, that's totally memorable for me.
And not for me because I don't remember, but I would have loved that.
Okay. You can sort of go with our memories. You can adopt our memories.
Yeah, just nod and agree. Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of the band or just even impressions of what you thought of them during the show?
I was a big fan. I mean, I don't remember any particular things to say about it, but yeah, I mean, I totally was dying to see them. So it was exciting and thought it was great. And they played all the songs I know. And it was super exciting to see them live. Yeah. But yeah, I don't have any particular memories of anybody, which is surprising if that's the one that I really wanted to see. But then I had those other memories because they were, unusual surprises
that's what you tend to remember, things that are sort of unusual or that you weren't expecting, that were like highly unique, or things that were disappointing. It's kind of more the extremes of the experience.
Yeah. And I mean, the other really strange thing that I remember that had nothing to do with the music, and I'm wondering if Phil's going to remember this. I think I wrote this on the board as well, about the people behind us. Are you? No, I bet you're not going to remember. So there was a woman behind us, like a bunch of people, but this one particular woman had a t-shirt on that she had cut off like right under her boobs and no bra. So whenever the bands were on, she'd be going, yeah, and her top would go right up. And it was so hard not to look at her, right? Because I'm like, oh my God, I can't look. I mean, obviously she was trying to get people to look, but
I love that stuff about concerts. People just doing strange stuff.
I'm going to do this crazy flat. And it's not like the band could see her because we were far back, right? Yeah. So I'm not sure who it was for, but she was having a lot of fun with it. And she was
doing it for herself. Yes. Yeah. Actually, I've got a little bit here from the blog entry I wrote in 2011. I'll just read this little bit because, again, I'm so glad I wrote what I did 10 years ago, because even between then and now, I've forgotten a lot. So I go back and, So what I wrote about the police and just about the evening, to be there in the midst of this huge outdoor gathering, caressed by the velvet July warmth under indigo skies with floating stars, to a spirited set of music experienced through that luxurious, narcotic, herbal sensuousness, sweetness. Musically, the only specific thing that really jumps out at me is when they did Every Breath You Take, which had just taken one step down the chart stairs after a long residency on the top step, and the 60,000 or so souls erupting in recognition. I'm pretty sure they did most of Synchronicity, plus most of the usual sing-along suspects, Roxanne, Message in a Bottle, do. But remember more how it all felt rather than details of this gig. I really had to give them props for this one. And afterwards, Le Chateau and I talked about how they've really been dynamic on this evening. And of course, well, they toured this for a year and then they were no more until they reunited later. So I never saw them again. Has anyone, because they've reunited a few times, has anyone seen them on their reunion tours?
No, I only ever saw them that once.
Right.
No, just the police picnic.
Yeah. So it was great. And again, you think, you saw them 3 times, but now this is a long, long time ago. And again, I've talked about this in many episodes that I feel in a lot of ways I was born just at the right moment. And I got to see so many people that, the experiences mean even more to me now. Because it's just incredible, because you only have, this happens once, you're in the moment, and then it's gone, and it only lives on in your memory.
Yeah.
Although, when you mentioned Jeannie Becker and the new music, I mean, that was our window into all of that music that we never heard about here. And they would bring, they would show all these bands in England and that we just wouldn't hear about. And then, trying to get the import records and go into the record stores and saying, who's, have you got such and such? And so that was, the start of it, and just how hard you had to fight, like, to hear that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or to even to get a hold of a imported music magazine, just to read about what was going on there.
Oh yeah, because I was one of the NME junkies. I still have stacks of my old NMEs, all filed and cataloged. So I read all that religiously, but I still couldn't hear a lot of the music, until CHRW came on. But again, the new music was this conduit where you could hear the bands, see interviews, see the videos, all this stuff. It was again, I think back now, holy crap, were we ever lucky to have that show.
Yeah. We never missed it. And we couldn't tape. I don't think we could tape it like my family did not tape it.
My dad got he got an early VCR, and it was after the new music had ended. I think I've maybe got I've tons of video from years later, but it was just before a lot of people had VCR. So I have very little new music on tape, unfortunately.
Was it on a Saturday? Did they show it on a Saturday afternoon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Quite late on in the afternoon. Because I can remember kind of being dressed and wanting to go downtown. I was like, get on, I want to watch this. I wanted to watch it, but then I was also itching to go downtown to go to the record stores.
We had a family cottage, and we went there every weekend in the summer, and we had TV with an aerial, and you had to, fiddle, and then you could get channel 10 and maybe something else. And we could get the new music, because I remember standing there and, kind of looking through the snow a bit to try, because it would not come in perfectly. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's incredible. And what you were talking about, how difficult it was. It's funny. I was just talking about this last night. My nephew was over, and we were watching a video of New Order in New York in 1981 at the Ritz. Really beautifully filmed. And we were talking about this, and mentioning how I used to read about Joy Division, and I didn't get to hear them until early 1980. There was a guy in Fanshawe who had this 1.5 hour alternative show on Thursday night, and he played it while I was taping the show. Wow. And I became obsessed, where now you would just go online, transmission, Joy Division. Okay, I only had to listen to the tape. I couldn't find a copy, and I was just obsessively playing this song over and over. And then I get a copy of The Enemy, and I'm reading about Joy Division, and I'm like, am I reading this right? Did the lead singer kill themselves? It took that long. And Closer came out in the summer, and it's like and I grabbed the first import copy. You had to work hard. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge Velvet Underground fan. For years, you couldn't buy the Velvet Underground in Nico. And I remember all this. It was really, really hard to find, sort of older music, but also the more obscure, newer music came out and play in things like CHRW here in London, and the new music as an interview show with videos. It was huge. We were so lucky to have it.
And I do remember, because imports were expensive. I didn't have the money. Even those imported magazines, I didn't have the money. But Records on Wheels was bringing in imported 45s. And it would sit on the desk on the corner, and I would make a beeline for those, because that's how, some of these names I had heard. I got a 45, and then at least I had something. So I actually just sold those recently. Oh no. I know.
I still have all of mine. Those, I know what you're talking about. I bought tons of those singles.
Yeah.
I still have them.
And I would go through that whole thing, but we sold them to Speed City. So if you want them, that's where they are.
Okay. Yeah, I know exactly. I bought a lot of 45s from those bins.
Yeah, I did.
All right. So the concert was over. And of course, the previous year, I have a highly memorable and annoying trip home on a bus where I felt like death, with a group of drunken frat boys who sang Roxanne for about 2 hours on the trip home. I literally thought I was either going to kill myself or all of them. So this trip home, I actually have no memory of it. I think it was just the 82 was a disaster day. It was a misadventure. This was a bonaventure. It was just, the whole day was great. Do you remember what you did after?
No, I can remember leaving because I remember how hard it just felt like it took forever to get out because of the amount of people. But that's about it. I can't remember sort of where we went afterwards. We might have gone. Did we? For some reason, I have this memory of us going, putting in what was left of the picnic, like I remember there being a pineapple for some reason. We put it in a locker in the bus station or the train station.
Yeah.
And then we went the day after, before we left. It was full of fruit flies, and we were all amazed, like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" It's like, how did that happen?
Surprise, surprise. I don't remember that, but we must have stayed there, obviously, because I don't remember getting home. So probably stayed with Wendy and then took the bus back.
Yeah.
Like the Greyhound back. And that's also when I learned, well, in the past couple of years before that, where you learn the whole, I'm staying over at so-and-so's house and I'll see you tomorrow, right? Like that. That was how you didn't have curfew back in the day, where they couldn't find you either because you didn't have a phone or anything.
No mobile phones.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible to disappear these days. So, yeah.
But we always had a good time together, so I'm sure we...
Yeah, we probably ended up, don't know, we probably tried to get into a bar or something, maybe.
Not with me along.
But sometimes, though, I mean, that's how I used to get in, is because I'd be with older people and they just, I guess he's the same age, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can remember back then as well, one of the things about going into Fry's and Cedar Lounge is that Wendy would go in first and pay and get the stamp. You know, you used to get a stamp.
Yeah.
And then, so you could go in and out. So then she would come back out with the stamp, and she always had magic marker in her bag, and we would copy it would always either be a dot, it would be something that's quite, and then you'd smudge it a little bit to make it look like you'd been in. So that's how I used to get in a lot of times. So we'd go in and just show your hand. Yeah, look, I got paid already.
One time to get in to see Pete when he had Idiot Savant, I think, or it might have been People's Project or one of those crazy bands. I actually pretended I was in the band and like carried in a tambourine and some other things. But it didn't work. Like they caught me and they said, and they're all like, she's in the band. And yeah, I mean, I think I ended up getting in, but they wouldn't serve me. Like, yeah.
Oh. I mean, when you can't even get in when you're part of the band, okay, then that's tough. Yeah.
I mean, they checked it out.
Yeah.
I did get served at the embassy, so that's
easier place to do so.
Yeah, the embassy just didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Vic too, I think. So the basement Vic.
Right. And that's right. They started, I think I remember going back to the Vic around 83, I think it was. 82, 83, they started having bands again. That's right, the Vic. Sadly, it's still closed, sitting there closed. That's closed. Call the Office is closed. Very, very sad. And of course, the Call the Office has been before that was the York. Actually, I remember talking about getting kicked out. I have a very clear memory of going to see NFG there in spring of 1980. And I would have been, 17? And one of the waiters going, "How old are you?" "Oh, I forgot my ID." He goes, "Well, just let you know, the cops have pulled up and they're about to come in. So thank you." And I went out as they were coming in, so narrowly missed that one. And apparently people who were behind, they went through and checked everyone's ID and hauled out a whole pile of people. So I was good timing on that one. Thank you, York. Thank you, York barman.
They got really tough there. Yeah.
Okay. I guess there was a lot of people. I kind of, after that, it was sort of like, well, I'm going to be legal next year. So I kind of stopped going a bit because I was always, I just really didn't look the age. So you know about that.
Yeah. And then it ruins your night because all your friends get in and you're not. And then you're like, okay, I guess I'll go home.
And also if you want to go in and out, to maybe join people in some activities outside. Every time you go in and out, there's a possibility you may not get back in. So yeah, it was it was a bummer, as we used to say. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for coming by and reliving the day and your memories, and you had a fun time. And I like the differences and the different reactions that we had and the different memories we have of the different acts. So it was really fun hearing it. And it was neat to see what was happening with our parallel days. Yeah. So thanks so much, Phil, once again. You'll, of course, be returning. And thanks, Noelle, so much for stopping by and taking the time.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So great to get back with Phil again.
Yeah.
That's really cool. This first time we're talking.
I know. Since 85.
Talk on Facebook, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah. So the initial intro to the episode was all about having my right arm stuck in one of the revolving doors going into the Eaton Centre in Toronto and not feeling a thing. Holy doodles. Oh my. Misty, watercolored memories, indeed. And as I stated at the top of the podcast, this was my last true festival for 9 years, with Lollapalooza 92 ending that dry spell. Now, in the interim, I saw lots of big outdoor concerts, and they're coming up. And I saw them during that 84 to 91 corridor, but no true festivals. And then I went on to attend Lollapaloozas for 93, 94, and 95, and they'll all be coming up down the line. And then after that, along with some one-off festivals, there's the Ottawa Blues Fests, Ottawa's multi-day, multi-stage, multi-genre festival. Despite its initial name, it started as a blues festival, but by the early 2000s, they had greatly diversified. It became a mega event on many stages, and that was one of the best things about living in Ottawa, and still would be. I have a number of entries up from the early 2010s from that period, but eventually there's going to be a whole bunch of Blues Fest shows from the noughties and also after what I have written, because they kind of stopped when Open Salon shut down, and even then I was a little bit backed up, because when I initially started writing the blog in 2010, I thought, well, I'll write about old shows and new shows. And again, looking back, the whole period of writing this was some of the most intense gig going I've ever done. I was seeing shows constantly. So anyway, there's a bunch up there. Well, this wraps up my look back at this final police picnic in Toronto back in 83. Now, this concert was number 19 in the original blog series that I was writing on Open Salon, and how I, count down the shows. And so number 20 in the original series was a 2-part compilation entry looking back at unseen shows, with the idea being that if you go to see a lot of concerts, or you want to go see a lot of concerts, you invariably miss shows. And there is that saying, hindsight is 20/20. So I thought this was a good number to sort of take out of the series and honor the unseen shows. Now, I've already created podcast episodes for each of the 2 parts of this look back. And I created the podcast in the summer of 2020 because, of course, the whole world was locked down with COVID. There was no live music. So I jumped ahead in the series, and I thought, let's look at these episodes on shows that I did not see as it is appropriate at the time. And they're up on the blog and the YouTube channel and blah, blah, blah. So my entry for what was concert number 20A, which is podcast episode 11, is You Won't See Me. 20 acts I wish I'd seen, ranging from the 1920s up until 1980, with me listing off and discussing acts from various time frames that I would love to have seen live, but never will, including Billie Holiday, the Sex Pistols, Fela Kuti, Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, the Velvet Underground, Miles Davis, and many more. And concert number 20B, which I turned into 2 podcast episodes, 9A and 9B, is Waiting in Vain, 22 performances I missed. It was initially 20, but when I did the podcasts in the summer of 2020, I thought, okay, I'd already missed 2 shows that year because of COVID, so I updated the original entry. Now there's 22, and you can listen or read about me looking back on the circumstances surrounding why I missed performances by The Clash, Bob Marley, XTC, Sonic Youth, Simon and Garfunkel, U2, and more. They're up on the blog. As I said, all the places that I podcast from. So tune in for venues surrounded by riot police, missed rides, and canceled shows. Some of these shows, I didn't see them because the shows were canceled. Anyway, tune in, and if you're a regular gig goer, you'll relate to some of these. You've been there. So then, up next is concert number 21, and ooh boy, the next 2 episodes look at 2 of my all-time favorite gigs, with this next show taking place on August 15th, 1983, just 10 days after this final police picnic that we just finished looking at. So join me next time, folks, as I recall what has to be one of the 2 or 3 best shows I've ever seen here in my hometown of London, Ontario, Canada, when the one, the only, the legendary and the regal Marianne Faithfull grants us an audience on a packed to the rafters Freifogels on a steamy August night. This hotly anticipated show was a distinctly more intimate experience than the police picnic. Now, by this point, the former 60s pop icon and former Mick Jagger paramour was in the final throes of a triumphant comeback, and that had been triggered by her late 1979 LP, Broken English, one of the true all-time classics. Now, at this point in 83, she was touring her 3rd island disc, A Child's Adventure, and conveniently she began her tour at my local watering hole. Indeed, this date kicked off her first ever Canadian tour, with London lucking into hosting this debut performance. And I know it made sense to do a big tour in Canada. Her records did particularly well here. Broken English was in the top 30. I'm pretty sure it went platinum. Dangerous Acquaintances went top 10. And A Child's Adventure was newly out, and it was doing really, really well. So join me next time for thigh-slapping rhythms, backstage gossip, contented smiles, and dangerous acquaintances. And following Marianne, David Bowie is up next with a show for the ages, and probably the most exciting concert I ever saw, with me, my old pal Miss Benny's, and 60,000 others taking in the Thin White Duke's first 2 nights at CNE Stadium. Yes, I'm back there a month later on the Let's Dance tour, with the also great Rough Trade opening this exceptional night out. You can't buy the type of electricity and excitement that was created on this evening. Wowie zowie. Actually, that was probably good. That was good for me to say, as I'm seeing Pavement at Massey Hall in a few weeks. So there's a connector. Anyway, Bowie at CNE Stadium at 83 is coming up after as episode 29. And of course, you can go to the mylifeinconcert.com blog to read the entries for these. They were written years ago for these shows, and those entries include, of course, photos, videos. The Bowie one, there's a very scratchy video from the local news the night of the concert, and various related ephemera. The same goes for this police picnic blog entry for this episode. And there's plenty for lots of other concerts I've seen through the years, so go and have fun. Please also remember to like, follow, subscribe, and hit the notification bell where applicable on our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. And please leave your memories of any of the gigs I'm writing about on the platform of your choice. And I also do a lot of posting on Facebook when I've got the episodes up. So if you've been to any of these shows, you've got memories, please share them. I love hearing them, and other people love reading them. And additionally, once again, they're on my Spotify playlist for this episode. There's two. Once again, MLIC Prompt, Walking on the Moon, Police Picnic 83, and that features tracks from all of the artists who appeared at this festival. And also MLIC Bring on the Night, Police Picnics 81, 82, 83, a master playlist of all the artists who played or were scheduled to play at each of these three police picnics. And finally, if you've enjoyed the podcast, be sure to tell your Toonhead friends about the one-of-a-kind experience that is mylifeinconcert.com. I'd like to say a big thanks to listeners both new and returning for taking the time to tune in. This is your host, Various Artists, signing off, and we'll meet up at the next concert. See you then, and see you there. Bye for now.